Welcome to the channel and welcome to my review / reveal of Codex Chaos Knights, the supplement for games of Warhammer 40k, available for pre-order from Games Workshop on Saturday the 6th of July. You can buy it from Games Workshop on Saturday the 13th of July. And as ever, thank you to Games Workshop for sending it through to me in advance, sending it through to a number of YouTubers and bloggers in advance, so we can have a look through and get this information out there to the community. Well done, Games Workshop. Okay, let's break down some of the basic deployment type stuff before we get into the juicy rules. In the Imperial Knights book, you have Imperium Knights and Admech Knights. In this book, you have Iconoclast Household Knights and Infernal Household Knights. And you have Traitorous Lancers in this book. So, in the command benefit of each Chaos Knight super heavy detachment is changed to none if it doesn't contain at least one Chaos Titanic unit, and is changed to 6 command points if it contains at least 3 Chaos Knight Titanic units. That's the same with the Imperial Knights. Basically, if you just bring the Armiger equivalent, you don't get any command points. If you bring a couple of Armigers and 1 Knight Titanic, then you'll get 3 command points for a super heavy detachment. And if you bring at least 3 Titanic units for your super heavy detachment, you'll get 6 command points. There are also rules for dread blades in this book, and dread blades function like free blades in the Imperial Knights book. Basically, you take a knight on his own or a couple of knights and you can give them some benefits, but along with the benefits they come with some negatives if you bring along dread blades. I don't see people run free blades very often, so I can't really imagine people running dread blades very often. Right, as for the knights themselves, in the Imperial Knights book you have essentially 3 different types of knights. You have your Armigers, you have your Questoris class, the standard knights, and then you have your Dominus class, the big Valiant and Castellan. And in this book, instead of 3 types of knights, essentially you have 4 types of knights. The first data sheet is the War Dogs, and the War Dogs are essentially your Armiger Warglaves or your other Warglaves. The War Dogs are the Warglaves, and it's got 1 data sheet, and you can stick your auto cannons on there, or you can stick your thermal spears on there. And the stat lines for the War Dogs and the weapons for the War Dogs are exactly the same as Armigers in the Imperial Knight book. Next up is the Knight Despoiler. This is the equivalent to the Questoris Knights, standard knights, 1 data sheet. And essentially you can, the Knight Despoiler comes with the Reaper Chainsword and Thunderstrike Gauntlet, which is the equivalent of a Gallant in the Imperial Knights book. But what you can do is you can switch off the Reaper Chainsword for the Avenger Gatling Cannon, the Rapid Fire Battle Cannon, or the Thermal Cannon. And then you can switch off the other weapon, the Thunderstrike Gauntlet, for the Avenger Gatling Cannon, Rapid Fire Battle Cannon, or Thermal Cannon. And it's all on this 1 data sheet. I think you could originally do this with the White Dwarf release or the chapter approved release for Chaos Knights. Basically, there's 1 type of Knight Despoiler, and you can load it up how you want to. You can give it both close combat weapons, or you can give it 1 close combat weapon and any version of guns, or take off both close combat weapons and give it any version of guns. So a standard knight with 2 rapid fire battle cannons, or a standard knight with 2 Avenger Gatling cannons. And the stats for the knight and the stats for the weapons are the same as in the Imperial Knight book. Then you have the Knight Tyrant, which is the equivalent of the Knight Dominus, the equivalent of the Castellan or the Valiant variants for the Imperial Knights. But there's no mixing around with this. It comes either as the Valiant version with a Thundercoil Harpoon and Conflagration Cannon, or it comes as the Castellan version. You can't suddenly put on a Volcano Lance with a Conflagration Cannon. You can't mix and match like you can with the Knight Despoiler class. So far, so simple. Everything that you can get for the Loyalist version, you can get for the Chaos version. And there are no new models released for these 3 versions as well. If you want to field the War Dog, Despoiler, or Tyrant, which is basically your Armiger, your Questoris, or your Dominus, you basically buy the Armiger, Questoris, or Dominus kit from Games Workshop, and then paint it up with lovely Chaos colours and stick loads of spikes all over it. And all the stats are the same, and all the weapons are the same for these 3 types of Chaos Knights. And then there's a new class of Knight, And this is the abhorrent class, and those are the ones with the bendy knees, the new models that we've seen running around. And if I've edited the video correctly, you'll see a picture of one of the abhorrent classes on the screen right now. And there's two versions of the abhorrent class. There's the Knight Desecrator and the Knight Rampager. The Knight Rampager is like your Gallant. He comes with a fist, a Thunderstrike Gauntlet, and a Reaper Chainsword. And when resolving an attack made with a Reaper Chainsword or a Thunderstrike Gauntlet by this model, an unmodified hit roll of a 6 causes 1 additional hit. So the close combat version, the Knight Rampager, has 5 attacks. He hits on 2s with his fist and his chainsword, and when he gets a 6 to hit, he gets an additional hit, but only with his fist or with his chainsword. And the Knight Desecrator comes with the new big gun called the Laser Destructor, and the Laser Destructor is heavy D3 at 60-inch range. So heavy D3 isn't great, considering this guy has a ballistic skill of 3 up, but it is strength 14 minus 4 D6 damage, and when resolving an attack made with this weapon, a wound roll of 6 inflicts D3 mortal wounds on the target in addition. So hitting on 3s, heavy D3 at strength 14 minus 4 means potentially you could be ripping through light armor. It means so long as if you're shooting a rhino, for example, you'll be hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s, no armor save, doing D6 damage a time with D3 shots. But it's unfortunate it's a heavy D3, because how many times are you going to roll that 1, right? It would have been nicer, I think, if it was just a heavy 2. If they want to make it a low firing weapon, make it a heavy 2. I guess a heavy 2d3 would have been absolutely brutal for strength 14 minus 4 d6 damage. But he's got the new big gun. He's also got a rule called Taskmaster, and you re-roll hit rolls of 1 for attacks made by models with the War Dog keyword while they're within 6 inches of this model. So the Knight Desecrator is the shooty version, and if you've got War Dogs a la Armigers within 6 inches of him, you can re-roll hit rolls of 1. That is in close combat or shooting, so long as they're within 6 inches of him. And the Knight Rampager, rampaging up the field, gets extra hits when he scores 6s to hit with his fist or his chainsword. Both of these models, the new abhorrent class model, has the same stat line as a standard Questoris Knight as a normal Knight. So strength 24 wounds, strength 8, toughness 8, 4 attacks, 3 up save. Well, the Knight Rampager has 5 attacks because he's got 2 close combat weapons. But those are your 4 flavors of knights. 3 of the old ones, 1 of the new ones. If you want your old knights to look suitably chaosy, you're going to have to convert them or paint them in weird ways, or maybe use leftover spikes and chains from the Rampager Desecrator kits to hang off your Armigers, to hang off your Questoris Knights. So you're looking at a codex which offers you, on the basic level, all the stats and all the weapons of the normal Imperial Knights, with a bit more on top, because it allows you to modify your standard Knight, your Despoiler, in different ways that the Imperium can't do. You can put 2 battle cannons on it, you can put 2. Your standard Knights, you have a bit more of a chocolate blocks to play around with, a bit more flavour to play around with. And also, unlike the Imperial Knights, there's 2 new Knights in here, which are the abhorrent class, and one helps Armigers hit a bit better, or War Dogs, and one of them can hit a bit better with 6s to hit. That's it on the surface. So that's what they do on the surface, a bit more than the Imperial Knights book does. The faction keywords are Chaos and Chaos Knights, and the keywords for the datasheets are, well, for the War Dogs it's Vehicle and War Dog, and for the other Knights it's Titanic and Vehicle. So on the surface they look like Imperial Knights with a bit more flavour, with a bit more variety to them. What will make them different is the households and the stratagems and the relics. So when it comes to the households, there's 2. There's the Iconoclast household and the Infernal household. We'll start with the Infernal household ambition first. So you can give all of your knights, make them an Infernal household, or give all of your knights an Iconoclast household and remain battle-forged. The Infernal household ambition is called Demonic Surge, and you can choose to do this. You don't have to do this. If you choose to do it at the start of your movement phase, it remains until the start of your movement phase. And what you can do is you would choose your Demonic Surge. You take a mortal wound yourself, and then you roll d3 on the table and get the result. So suffer a mortal wound and get a bonus. Or instead of rolling d3 on the table, you can choose to do this at the start of your movement phase. It will last until the end of your beginning of your next movement phase. So it will last for the whole turn essentially. And you can pick the result on the table. But instead of taking one mortal wound and rolling, you'll take d3 mortal wounds and pick. Now, why would you ever want to do 1 or d3 mortal wounds to yourself? Well, these are the results of the demonic surge. On a 1-2, you add 2 to this model's move and advance and charge rolls. So plus 2 inches to this model's move characteristic, and add 1, to their advance, and add 1 to their charge rolls. That's moving 14, adding add 1 to advance, and adding add 1 to charge rolls. And Chaos Knights have access to the full tilt stratagem, and it is called full tilt. Basically, use this stratagem at the start of your charge phase, select a Chaos Knight model from your army, and that model can charge even if it advanced. So that's pretty good. If you roll a 3-4 on this table, so you're choosing your demonic surge and you're picking this table, you're either rolling on it or picking on it. Like I said, the first one, you can move further, charge further. The second one, you add 1 to the model's toughness characteristic. Toughness 9 knights, anyone? Add 1 to the toughness characteristic. That is pretty good. But you will take a mortal wound, or d3 mortal wounds. And the last one is demonic power. Select one range weapon this model is equipped with, and add 1 to that weapon's strength characteristic and damage characteristic. So let's just think about that for a second. Adding 1 to a weapon's strength and damage characteristic. So there's Castellan Knights in this book. They're called Knight Tyrants. How about firing a Plasma Decimator for heavy 2d6 at strength 9, minus 3 damage. Or the Volcano Lance, which is heavy d6 at strength 15, minus 5, and 3d3 plus 1 damage on the Volcano Lance. How mean would a Castellan Knight be if you could pick one of those weapons and add 1 to that weapon's strength and damage characteristics? Or even a Knight Valiant with the Conflagration Cannon. I like Knight Valiants. Auto hitting at strength 7 minus 2 damage. Well, how about the Conflagration Cannon being strength 8 minus 2, 3 damage? So yeah, taking a mortal wound or d3 mortal wounds and having a bit more punch might be something that some people consider. But honestly, I can't see people getting many Infernal Household Ambitions, because the Iconoclast Household Ambition, Conquerors Without Mercy, is just simply better. And, oh yeah, unlike the Imperial Knight book, looking through the stratagems, there's 3 pages of stratagems in here. In the Imperial Knight book, it can get confusing because some stratagems apply to Questorus Knights only and not the other Knights only. All these stratagems appear to apply equally to both of these households, whether you do the Demonic Surge Infernal household or whether you go for the Iconoclast Household Ambition. But the Iconoclast Household Ambition, so give all your knights in your detachment Iconoclast household instead of the Surge thing. And if a model with this ambition made a charge move, was charged, or performed a heroic intervention, add 1 to the model's attacks characteristic until the end of the turn. And the armor penetration characteristic of melee weapons for the model is improved by 1 until the end of the turn. And when an enemy unit fails a morale test within 12 inches of any models with this ambition, 1 additional model flees that turn. So we have gallants in the Imperial Knight book. In this book, you have the Knight Desecrator. Sorry, not the Knight Desecrator. The Knight Despoiler. You can give it 5 attacks and leave it with a Reaper Chainsword and Thunderstrike Gauntlet, hitting on 2s. If you give it the Iconoclast Household Ambition and you charge, you'll have 6 attacks, hitting on 2s. And if you do the tap-tap dance, you'll have 18 attacks, hitting on 2s when you charge, which is pretty good. So plus 1 to your attack characteristics when you charge. on your base level of 5 attacks. Yeah, imagine 18 attacks running forward into a unit of Primaris Space Marines or any infantry for that matter, hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s. It's and your AP characteristic goes up by 1 by any melee weapon, so be hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s at AP -3, D3 damage a time with your Titanic feat, or smacking away with 6 attacks, hitting on 2s with your Reaper Chainsword or your Giant Fist of Doom. Now, there are ways to make that better as well. There's a Warlord trait where you can add 1 to your Warlord's attacks characteristic. So if you put that on your Knight Gallant equivalent, when they charge, they've got 7 attacks hitting on 2s when they come in, or 21 tapping dancing attacks when they come charging in, hitting on 2s, on infantry, wounding on 2s. Can you make that any better? Well, yes, you can. There's a relic called the Gauntlet of Ascension, which is the Big Fist of Doom Gauntlet, Thunderstrike Gauntlet. Thunderstrike Gauntlets, when you attack with them, are unwieldy. This one isn't. It is just strength times 2, -4, a flat 6 damage a time. So this guy with his 7 attacks will still be hitting on 2s. But when resolving an attack with this weapon, you can re-roll the hit roll and you can re-roll the wound roll. So yeah, a Knight Gallant equivalent, +1 attack for charging, +1 attack for his Warlord trait. That's 7 attacks with a Thunderstrike Gauntlet at strength 16, hitting on 2s, wounding on 2s, re-rolling. That's a potential of 48 damage with 1 strike. And every time you kill a character with this relic gauntlet, you get +1 attack. So you get up to 8 attacks. So you go wheeling into Magnus or Mortarion, and you hit them on 2s, wound them on 2s, re-rolling to hit, re-rolling to wound. Beautiful thing. Oh, or 21 tap dance attacks on something instead. Can you make that even better? Well, yes, you can. Instead of putting it on the Gallant equivalent, which is called the Knight Despoiler, put it on one of the new Knights, the Knight Rampager. Remember, when resolving an attack made with a Reaper Chainsword or Thunderstrike Gauntlet with a Knight Rampager, any unmodified hit roll of a 6 scores an additional hit. So his 7 attacks, his 7 hits, could go up to 8 or higher. The only problem is the Knight Rampager is 387 points with his Chainsword and Thunderstrike Gauntlet. 387 points to have the ability for 6s to explode. Or you could just bring your Knight Despoiler with a Reaper Chainsword and Thunderstrike Gauntlet, and he's 307 points. So I would probably just go with the cheaper version, the standard version Knight, with the fist and the sword for 307 points with a stubber. You're paying 80 points more for the opportunity of maybe those 6s exploding and you having more hits, and that's only with the Chainsword or with the Thunder Strike Gauntlet thing. Words confuse me. 307 points for a Warlord that gets 7 attacks on the charge. Or you don't even have to give it that Warlord trait. You could just have your Knight Despoilers, have 3 of them. 3 of them will cost less than 1,000 points, 307 points each. Or with 6 attacks when they charge, tapping all over the place. Absolutely brutal stuff. I can see these guys turning up to play. The other 5 Warlord traits, you've got Infernal Quest, which basically means your Warlord gets objectives secured and he counts as 10 models when he's stood on an objective. You've got Harbinger of Scrap Code. At the end of your movement phase, roll a d6 for every enemy vehicle within 6 inches of your Warlord, and on a 4-up, that vehicle loses a mortal wound. You've got Warp Haunted Hull, which means your Warlord can attempt to deny 1 psychic power as if he was a psyker. In addition, when the Warlord would lose a wound as a result of a psychic power, lose a mortal wound in the psychic phase, it says, sorry. So he can deny a witch, and if he loses wounds in the psychic phase, on a 5+, he doesn't lose wounds. Eager for the kill. When you make an advance or charge roll for your Warlord, add 1 to the result. In addition, add 1 to this Warlord's attacks characteristics while they're wholly within your opponent's deployment zone. So that's one that you could stack on top of the infernal household ambition, the demonic surge thing. If you've got demonic hunger, where you add 2 to your model's move characteristic and add 1 to their advance and charge rolls through the demonic surge, then you can add an additional 1 to the result when you charge with the eager for the kill warlord trait. So that's essentially plussing 2 to your movement and plussing 2 to your charge when you go flying up the table, eager for the kill warlord trait. The last one is Aura of Terror. When a charge roll is made for an enemy unit within 12 inches of this warlord, subtract 1 from the result. And when they take a morale test within 12 inches of the warlord, they've got to roll 2d6 and discard the lowest. It doesn't say that the enemy has to charge the warlord. It's basically a 24-inch bubble, or 12 inches from the center of your warlord. Every single time someone in the enemy army charges something, they're minusing 1 to the result. They could be charging a unit 10 inches away from you, going into the cultist screen right in front of you, or something to the left or something to the right. It's -1 to their charge. And whenever they take leadership, roll 2d6 and discard the lowest result. But I think we can see there that probably the best warlord trait is adding 1 to your warlord's attacks characteristic. At least that's the one I would take. There is no automatic +1 to your ion shields here. What's the name of the warlord trait in the Imperial Knights Codex, which means that Iron Bulwark. There's Iron Bulwark is a thing in the Imperial Knights Codex which gives you just a +1 to your invulnerable save. There isn't one of these here, but there is a relic like that. So there's a relic that allows you to get a 4-up invulnerable save if you're an iconoclast knight, but there's no warlord trait, and there is rotate iron shields in here as well, which is a stratagem for 1 command point, which allows you to get a 4-up invulnerable save versus ranged weaponry. There are other ways of turning a punchy knight into a beast as well. You don't have to give it the gauntlet that allows you to re-roll to hit and re-roll to wound. Say you're going up against Mortarion or Magnus or a whole swarm of Talos in front of you. Well, you can give them another relic instead, the Cornate Target. Once per battle at the start of a fight phase, a model with this relic can activate it, and when it does, till the end of that phase, invulnerable saves cannot be made against attacks with melee weapons by that model, and invulnerable saves cannot be made for that model. So you could charge this knight into a unit of Talos, for example, hit on 2s, wound them on 2s, and they don't get invulnerable saves, and each hit and wound is doing 6 damage, killing them utterly. You can one-shot Mortarion, you can one-shot Magnus, you can, activating a relic like this, you could one-shot a Warhound Titan or a Stomper potentially, do up to 42 damage with this guy, or just stomp all over them, stomp all over demons or anything, or Terminators, not that anyone takes Terminators in competitive play, but stomp all over anything with an invulnerable save and remove the invulnerable save with a crazy number of attacks. Let's talk about all the other relics while we're here. There's the Blasphemous Engine. You take an infernal household model only other than a Dreadblade, and a model with this relic is considered to have double the number of wounds characteristics remaining for the purposes of determining what row to use on its damage table. There's the Iconoclast household model, and a model with this relic has a 4-up invulnerable save against ranged weapons. You have the Zinchian basically you turn your knight into a Psyker. The knight becomes a Psyker and no smite, and can deny the witch. If you've given your knight the warlord trait where it can already deny the witch, well, it can deny the witch twice and cast smite once. The downside to this thing is when this knight is reduced to 0 wounds, it automatically blows up. Helm of Warp Sight, Knight Rampager, Desecrators or Knight Despoilers. So this is not a Castellan or Valiant, this isn't an Armiger. But standard knights and the new Bendy Need knights, when resolving an attack with a ranged weapon, ignore hit roll modifiers. So if there's any Alatok flyer spam out there dancing away from your Avenger Gatling cannons or your rapid fire battle cannons, you're just ignoring hit roll modifiers with the Helm of Warp Sight. You have a relic that allows you to command point farm on a 5-up. Again, not for Valiant and Castellan Knights and not for Armigers, but you can command point farm. There's the Rune of Niktgrag for Dreadblade models. and a model with this relic has a 5+ invulnerable save against attacks made with ranged and melee weapons. That's for dread blades or free blades. There's a putrid carapace of Nurgle, which is every time the unit takes a wound in close combat, if your knight is getting hit in close combat on a 4+, the dudes who made the wound on your knight take a mortal wound after the attacks have been resolved. But it's only a 50-50 chance, and you can only do 1 mortal wound back again each time. The Bound Varadian Psychogeist. When resolving an attack made with a ranged weapon by a model with this relic, on an unmodified wound roll of 6, the armor penetration characteristic of that weapon is improved by 1, so AP 0 becomes AP -1. The Traitor's Mark. When a model from your army with this relic is within 12 inches of any enemy unit, subtract 1 from the leadership characteristics of each of those units. And while a model from your army with this relic is within 6 inches of enemy units, subtract 2 from the leadership characteristics of each of these enemy units. Then we have the Quicksilver Throne of Slaanesh. When an advance or charge roll is made for this model with this relic, add 1 to the result. And this model always fights first. If there are enemy units that have charged or have a similar ability, then alternate choosing units to fight with, starting with the player whose turn is taking place. But the Quicksilver Throne of Slaanesh, if you think about the Demonic Surge thing that we talked about, and also the +1 to your advance or charge warlord trait, then potentially you have an Imperial Knight here that can advance an extra 3 inches and charge an extra 3 inches when you put all those modifiers together. And with the full tilt strategy, you're looking at moving a long way across the battle grid and almost guaranteeing those first turn charges or a really long bomb charges. Sure, you can only declare a subject as a unit as a target of a subject of the charge if you're within 12 inches, but getting +3 to your charge roll with the warlord trait and the demonic surge and this relic, that's pretty nasty. You're pretty much guaranteed to get where you want to go and hit what you want to hit when you want to hit it. There are a couple of more relics, pimped up weapons here or there, but that's it. 2 pages of relics, and some of them are very good. Obviously the one that just strips away, once per battle, strips away your opponent's invulnerable saves is nasty. I quite like that Paragon Gauntlet, which allows you to re-roll all failed hits and all failed wounds on a punchy knight. Particularly as it hasn't got the -1 to hit, which you normally do use when you have a gauntlet. There's always the ever useful 4+ invulnerable save, a permanent rotate iron shields essentially. But there's also a little bit of flavour here for those narrative people, turning a knight into a psyker and giving it that warlord trait as well, so it can always smite and deny 2 psychic powers is nice. Or a Slaanesh model that charges and advances a long way, that's nice. So generally speaking, I'd say a good half of these relics are decent and are interesting and are worth taking, but I think we're going to see a couple of them stand out and a couple of them be used again and again. Right, stratagems. I'd say a good third of the stratagems in here, maybe half, are the same as the ones in the Imperial Knights book, but don't worry, they're all the good ones. We already mentioned full tilt and rotate iron shields, for example. But for 2 CP, you have Iron Aegis. That's the one no one uses, but everyone within 6 inches of your knight gets a 5+ invulnerable save. You've got the one that on a 4+, the knight blows up. So you spend 2 command points, and on a 4+, your knight blows. Thunder Stomp, that allows you to do extra mortal wounds to infantry and swarms. Sky Reaper protocols on War Dogs, using War Dog auto cannons, reroll a hit roll against flyers. You've got Corrupted Heirlooms and Tyrannical Court. Corrupted Heirlooms allow you to generate more characters and take relics, and Tyrannical Court allows you to generate more characters and take more warlord traits. You also have Pack Dogs, Chain Sweep, Death Grip, Demonic Guidance System, and Devastating Reach. These are all available, but with different names, in the Imperial Knights book. The Pack Dogs is the one that allows your Warglaives to reroll charges, or War Dogs. Chain Sweep allows you to put extra mortal wounds on a unit that you're locked in combat with. Death Grip for a command point is the one where you pick up a model and squeeze it to death using a Titanic chain fist thing, not chain fist, thunder gauntlet thing. Demonic guidance system is basically your oath breaker guidance system. 3 command points. You can fire at a model, even if it isn't in line of sight, and that model can be a character. Some of the new ones now. For 1 command point, Titanic Duel. This one's quite nice. Use this stratagem at the start of a fight phase. Select a Chaos Knight that is within 1 inch of an enemy Titanic unit. So say there's 2 knights fighting each other. It doesn't have to be an other Imperial Knight that you're fighting against, as long as it has the Titanic keyword. It could be a Warhound, it could be a Baneblade tank. Both players basically choose a number between 1 and 3. They put a dice down on the table. You cover your dice, they cover their dice, and then you pull your hand away at the same time. If the numbers differ, then until the end of that phase, add the number you choose to the attacks characteristics of the model, but attacks made with melee weapons by that model can only target Titanic units. So say you both put a dice down on the table, you hide it, they hide it, and they'll typically pick a number 3, hoping that you won't pick 3, because if you pick 3 and they pick 3, you don't get any additional attacks. But if you pick 3 and they pick 2, or they pick 3 and you pick 2, so they say, right, I'll put 3 down. Well, and then you both reveal, and they picked a 3 and you picked a 2, because the numbers differ, and you picked a 2 even though it's lower, you get 2 extra attacks. They've got a 1/3 chance of matching your number. If they don't match your number, you add those attacks to your model's attacks characteristics. So you go charging in with your Knight Despoiler with its Reaper Chainsword and Thunderstrike Gauntlet. It's got 5 attacks. It's got +1 of attacks because it's picked the Iconoclast Household Warlord trait thing. And it's got an extra attack because it's your Warlord. So it's got 7 attacks charging in there. And then you spend a command point on Titanic Duel, and they cover up a 3 and you cover up a 2. And because it's this different number, your 7 attacks jump to 9 attacks, hitting on 2s. Yeah, crazy stuff. Trail of Destruction. 2 command points. Use this stratagem when a Chaos Knight model from your army fires Overwatch, or is chosen to shoot, or chosen to fight. Till the end of the phase, when resolving an attack made by that model, you can re-roll the hit roll. It says re-roll the hit roll, it doesn't say re-roll any number of dice. So I think this one will need a fact because it says re-roll the hit roll. If you've got many attacks, you're re-rolling all the dice surely. Break the enemy line for 2 command points. Use this stratagem at the start of a fight phase. Select an enemy unit within 1 inch of an Iconoclast Household model. When resolving an attack made with a melee weapon by an Iconoclast Household model, fill your army against that unit, you can re-roll the hit roll. Then we have 3 stratagems, which are 3 vows, which you give a knight before the battle. And these are for Iconoclast Household Knights. So use this stratagem before the battle, select 1 Iconoclast model from your army, and declare a vow of carnage, 1 command point. Until the end of the battle, keep a tally of the enemy models destroyed as a result of attacks made by your vow of carnage model. Add 1 to that model's attacks characteristic for every 10 models they destroy. The model cannot be selected for the other vows. So every 10 models you destroy, you get an extra attack. 2 command points. Vow of Dominance. Again, before the battle begins, pick a household model, Iconoclast household model from your army. Vow of Dominance. Until the end of the battle, when resolving an attack made against that model, an unmodified wound roll of a 1, 2, or 3 always fails, irrespective of any abilities that the weapon or the model making that attack may have. So, whenever anyone tries to wound your model on a 1, 2, 3, that wound always fails. The model cannot be selected before the other vows. You can only use, all of these stratagems you can only use once per battle. And the last one, Vow of the Beast Slayer. Use this stratagem before the battle. Again, select an Iconoclast household model from your army. When resolving an attack made by that model against an enemy unit that contains any models with a wounds characteristics of 8 or higher, you can re-roll wound rolls of 1. And again, you can't use this, you can't put this vow, stack this vow with other vows, and you can only use this stratagem once per battle. For 2 command points, the Vow of Dominance, making your knight immune to wound rolls, unmodified wound rolls of 1, 2 or 3, making sure those wound rolls always fail. We're going to see the vow of dominance a lot. Another one we also might see quite a lot is bind the souls of the defeated, but you have to be in the infernal household, the one with the demonic surge, to pick this one. It does cost 2 command points, but basically you can regain up to 6 wounds as a result of this stratagem. So you pay your 2 command points at the start of the fight phase, and for every model that you kill in the fight phase, you roll a d6, and on a 4-up you regain 1 lost wound, and each knight can only regain up to 6 wounds as a result of this stratagem in the same phase. So if you're sending your knight steaming in there against a pile of hordes, some Tau, some guardsmen, some orcs, and you're stomping all over them, you've got a 50-50 chance of regaining wounds for every single model that you destroy. 3 command points pact with the Dark Gods for infernal household models only. When it's destroyed, don't explode it. Roll a d6 at the end of the phase, and on a 4-up, return that model to play with d3 wounds remaining. Costs 3 command points and a 50-50 chance to put a model back with d3 wounds remaining. Demonic ammunition. Use this stratagem before the battle. Select a Chaos Knight's detachment. This is your whole detachment. Will get their heavy stubbers will be increased to strength 5. So for a command point, putting your stubbers from 4 to 5, that's pretty good, depending on how many stubbers you've got in your army. 2 command points, Diabolic Rift. This is the last one. Use this stratagem at the start of your opponent's psychic phase, and until the end of the phase, when a psychic test is taken for an enemy model within 12 inches of any Chaos Knight household models from your army, the enemy model suffers a Perils of the Warp on any dice roll, not just a double 1 or double 6. 2 command points. It affects your entire Chaos Knight's infernal household. Every single psyker that does a psychic power within 12 inches of your knights automatically perils. You place it at the start of your opponent's psychic phase. You're going up against Thousand Suns, you're going up against Eldari. That one is wonderful. And I can't believe it's so cheap either, because in the games where you're going to want to do that, 2 command points to make sure that your opponent perils everywhere within 12 inches of any of your knights, not just one knight, but any of your knights in your household. In the armies, in the battles where you're going to want to do that, it's going to be very, very significant. It's going to be game changing in some cases. Okay, that's the book. I'm not going to go through the Dreadblade packs and damnations. That's the equivalent to the free blade stuff in the Imperial Knights book, because it's a bit long-winded and very few people are going to take Dreadblades. But my first impressions of reading the book is it's like Imperial Knights, but a little bit better. In the Imperial Knights book, there's 3 flavors of knights. You've got the Warglaves, the Questorus, and the Dominus. And here you've got those 3 plus another one. You've got the Abhorrent class as well. I can't see the Abhorrent class being used an incredible amount just by looking at it at the moment, because Valiants and Castellans, which are Knight Tyrants in this book, are just very good. And the Knight Despoilers having 2 twin Avenger Catling cannons on them, or 2 twin rapid fire battle cannons on them, we're going to see them a lot, particularly because of the Infernal Household ambition. That demonic power, select 1 ranged weapon and add 1 to that weapon's strength characteristic and damage characteristic on just some cheap Knight Despoilers. Rapid fire battle cannons at strength 9 at damage D3 plus 1. Or on Avenger bolt cannons at strength 7 minus 2, a flat 3 damage every time. I think we're going to see I know it costs you a mortal wound or D3 mortal wounds to pick it when you use that demonic surge, but I think it's worth it. So this book, it can do what Imperial Knights does, but a little bit better, because you can use that demonic surge to make your shooty stuff even more shooty if you want to. Or you can increase your toughness on your models in the first turn if you want to. And then when it comes to jumping on stuff and punching stuff, well, there are rules in this book and stratagems in this book which allow your knights to move a little bit faster. And they're already pretty quick with a movement characteristic of 12. And with the Iconoclast Household ambition, the one which allows you to Add 1 attack when you charge, and increase your AP by 1 when you charge, and your opponent loses an extra model when they fail a morale test. That one means that you're better at fighting. So there's ways of playing. It's like playing with Imperial Knights, but with spiky bits on, and the shooty Knights can be a little bit better at shooting, and the punchy Knights can be a little bit better at punching. Now, many of the stratagems in here are the same as in the standard Imperial Knights book, but it's in some ways a blessing, in some ways a curse, because the ones that they did keep are pretty much all the good ones. But the reason why it's a curse is because there was an opportunity to add some more flavour, add some more narrative, and a different type of zing to the way Chaos Knights play. They will play a little bit different to Imperial Knights, but by stretching a bit further on the stratagems, they could have made them play significantly, well, not significantly different, but a bit more differently, shall we put it that way. However, if you do end up playing with Chaos Knights, you're not going to mind so much having full tilt and having rotate iron shields and having these sorts of things on your knights, because they're good. So Chaos Knights, there's some dirty tricks and combos in here. I could easily pick out a couple of them straight away, which I went through, the fact that you can get really smashy if you want to. I'm sure there's a couple more tricks and combos in here that other people will find or highlight straight away. There's only been a few occasions where I've read a codex straight away and thought, oh no, this is going to be a problem. And looking at this, I think some punchy knights charging up the table is going to be a problem. You can get 4 punchy knights for just over 1,200 points with many attacks and ways to give them more attacks, hitting on 2s when they come charging up the table. You're not going to have much shooting at 1,000. You're going to have negligible shooting at 1,200 points, but it gives you enough points left over to add the shooty elements to your army, or go full assault-based lists. Basically, I'm a bit scared at some of the lists that might come out of this codex. We'll see what happens as people get to grips with it. Now, there are some people out there that really hate Imperial Knights and think they break the game, and Codex Chaos Knights will certainly add fuel to their fire and get them in all a twist and dither. But most people don't go to top level tournaments. Most people just play with their mates at home or go to the local gaming club, and having a brand new codex with a brand new faction, because this is a brand new faction, Codex Chaos Knights, to play Warhammer 40k with is a good thing. I want Games Workshop to release more new models, more new factions, and allow us give the player base more variety and more things to play with. So yeah, and if it unbalances things at the top end, at tournament level and organised play, I'm sure Games Workshop will step in Chapter 3 prove 2019 and rebalance the system where they need to. So Codex Chaos Knights is here. Some people will call it broken, but it doesn't matter what book drops. Someone out there always calls it broken. At the end of the day, new models, new rules, new ways for you guys to enjoy Warhammer 40k, which is only a good thing. So I'll shut up, otherwise I'll end up going into a good 10-minute rant, and we leave DZHQ for things like that. Thanks for listening. Happy wargaming.